Uh, I want to talk to you about how forgiveness or lack of forgiveness can actually ruin our witness, our testimony. Now, I want to explain what I mean by that. If you've watched the last couple days of Bible Study Live, I've been working through the story. Well, we hear the story as the story of the prodigal son. And sometimes it's told as the story of the compassionate father or the story of the ungrateful brother. But today, what I want to talk about is the power of forgiveness in helping people make a decision to want to know Jesus. You know, some people think that the number one reason people don't want to follow Jesus is because of the stuff that the world is attracting them to. And while I think that plays a part, the truth is the number one reason people don't want to be a Christian is because of Christians. That's right. How we live this out helps people get an idea of whether or not they want to join us on this journey. Jesus called us to make disciples. A disciple is a student, a learner. Well, if somebody sees behavior that to them doesn't line up with something good, why would they want to learn that? So I want to just recap two stories with you today and share with you the impact that can be made, the hope that can be found in learning to forgive. So in the story of the prodigal son, quick recap of the story, a guy has two sons, older brother, younger brother. In the Jewish culture, older brother gets a double portion. So when the inheritance time would come, he'd get double. Set that aside for a second. In the story, younger son says, Dad, I want my inheritance. I want to go out on my own. Instead of reprimanding him and telling him how stupid he is for making such a dumb mistake, the dad says, here you go. Love you. Bye. Kid takes off. Now, it's not like today, Dad couldn't get on social media, check where his kid was, make sure he was okay. Instead, the father had no idea if his son was dead or alive. But every day, it seems like the story that Jesus is painting talks about the kid realizes, man, he made a mistake. He burned through his money, spent it on prostitutes, going nuts, and he's slopping pigs for somebody. That's his job. And he is so down on his luck that the pig's slop looks good to him to eat. But he's not even allowed to eat that. So he says, my dad takes care of the people that work for him better. I'm heading home. And then it says, he's prepping this speech to say sorry, and the dad sees him a long way off and goes running for him. And as he starts to give the speech in the Message, I love it, Eugene Peterson's paraphrase says, but the father wasn't even listening. He said to his people, hey, go get the fattened calf. We're throwing a party. My son was dead, but now he's alive. He was lost, but now he's found. Right? So there's the story that we hear about the redemption. And here's the cool thing about this. This is important. The reason the father wasn't listening to the son's apology is because he had made the decision to forgive him before the son ever asked for it. Now you say, well, how does this have to do with my witness and my testimony, Matt? I'll tell you exactly how. Because in the next part of the story, the older son, he's like, what's going on? And one of the hired hands is so excited. He says, great news. Great news. Your brother came home. He was lost. He's found. He's like, the person that saw this, saw the father's excitement. His forgiveness was like, oh, whoa, a party's happening. See, here's a crazy thing. The older brother was bummed out. He didn't understand it, but mostly because he was focusing on, he didn't realize that his father loved him unconditionally, right? Because he gives his father this big old lecture. I've been here, I've been working, I've been doing all the stuff that you're asking me, but you don't throw a party for me, you don't let me go. And the father says, son, everything I have has always been here for you. It's always been yours. But your brother was gone, man. He was dead, now he's alive. Like he was lost, now he's found. So of course we got to throw a party. And the older son was upset. But the father, even though the older son didn't get it and he didn't behave the way he should have in that moment, the father still showed compassion to him too. Now, if you think about it, you know, these folks that worked for the father, right? The community of people that came to the cookout, they would have seen this interaction. And what they see from a father is one that forgives a kid that wronged him and took off to another country and then came back. And he sees the father never stopped loving him. They see a father who, if he saw him a long way off, means he went out there looking, hoping he'd come home. They saw hope in the father who had already forgiven. And then when the older son doesn't react well, they see forgiveness there too. But there's another story in the Bible about forgiveness and how how God's followers don't always seem to embrace it well. And it's the story of Jonah. And if you know the story, God told Jonah, go to Nineveh, let them know if they don't change their ways, I'm gonna strike them all down. Now, to understand who the people of Nineveh were, think the Taliban. That's what they were. The Ninevites, when they would conquer, they would rape, they would murder, they would sacrifice children. They were horribly violent conquerors. And God sent Jonah with a message. Tell them to turn around, or I'm going to wipe them out. I'm not going to let them keep doing what they do to people. Jonah doesn't want to go, right? He gets swallowed by the giant fish. We all know he gets vomited up on the shore. And he tells the people of Nineveh what God said, and they change. He tells people of Nineveh, look, if you want God's forgiveness, just change. Stop doing what you're doing. Stop the murder, stop the rape, stop the violence, stop this empire mindset. Repent, turn to God. And they tore their clothes and said, we need to do this. We need to change. And they did. And now you would think Jonah would be like, yes, yay, God, you were right. But no, Jonah's like, this is exactly why I didn't want to come tell them this, because I knew you would be gracious and forgive them. What? Isn't that the whole purpose? Don't we want that? Funny thing is, often we want it for ourselves, but we have a very hard time extending it to others. Heck, we even have a hard time extending God's forgiveness to others, and it's not ours to give. He already gave it. Why do I share all this with you? Because here's the thing. If you're somebody following Jesus, I bet you want other people to know who he is. If you're someone who loves God, I bet you want other people to know and experience God's love that you've experienced yourself, right? But the thing is, people watch our life. See, there's this Christian rapper dude named Andy Mineo, and my wife had shared something with me. He said, in one of his songs actually, he says, your life may be the only Bible that someone reads. You know, back in the days that it was written, people didn't have copies. It wasn't a printing press, right? They didn't have copies of the scripture. We have the luxury of being able to read and learn all these beautiful lessons from these stories that are told. But the reality is, not everybody's opening up that book to learn what Jesus did, because he did it right? He didn't do any of it wrong. So they look at us and they go, that's what being a Christian's about. And sometimes, rightfully so, they see the way we share online. I know I'm guilty of this too. And they see, sometimes they can maybe think being a Christian means leaning a certain way politically. They can think being a Christian means thinking you're holier than. They can think being a Christian means you can't do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But none of that is what being a follower of Jesus is supposed to be about. What is it about? Well, from the beginning of the story, it's been about forgiveness, which is a result of love. What do I mean? Well, I mean, God knew everything that was going to happen in eternity before it's ever happened, right? If you're a follower, you believe that. You know God knows everything to come, which means before he created the first human, he knew Adam and Eve were going to make a bad choice. He knew that bad choice would lead to all of humanity getting so jacked up that one day his own son would get murdered by the same people he created. Yet God still created us. Now, some people would stop and go, well, that's pretty stupid. Why would he create people that are going to kill his own kid? Well, two things. One, he knew Jesus was eternal. The Jesus putting on skin was to come and show us what's possible and how to live, and to help bridge that gap between us and God. But mostly Jesus putting on skin was to do what nothing else could do, which was be a sacrifice to atone for that fall that was going to happen. So I have to believe, based on God's omniscience, that Jesus knew from the beginning of time what we were going to do with him too. Yet he still chose the path he chose. So how do we live that out? What's the hope? Well, here's the hope. Starting now, we can choose that when we get wronged, we're going to forgive. And we can understand it's going to hurt sometimes. It's going to be horribly uncomfortable. It's not going to be fun. And it's going to be a weight that we carry, right? It's hard. Forgiveness is hard. But when we choose to forgive, when we choose to put others first, that's what we're doing when we choose to forgive, not just putting the person we're forgiving first. You might go, I'm not going to put my abuser, my rapist, my thief, my horrible parents who beat me growing up. Yeah, I'm not going to put them first. That might be you. You might say, I'm not going to put that former business partner that robbed me out of money first. That might be how you feel. And I get it. But when I say putting others first, I'm not just talking about the person you're forgiving, even though that is what God did when we were his enemies. But I'm talking about, think of all the people that watch the life you're living and see when somebody hurts us so bad and wrongs us and we say, I'm going to choose to forgive them. Doesn't mean you choose to forget it. Doesn't mean that you go, hey, I'm just going to enter right back into a friendship, a relationship, a business agreement with somebody. But what it means is I'm not going to carry around that weight, that hurt. I was talking to my buddy Leon yesterday, and his wife had shared something with him that my wife, I think, had read somewhere as well. And it said, holding on to anger, like lack of forgiveness, is like drinking the poison and expecting the other person to be affected by it. See, we've got to stop drinking the poison of unforgiveness because, it does affect the other people. When we drink the poison of unforgiveness, all the people watching our lives, they see the sickness that it's causing us. But when we choose to be like God, put love first, think about the other folks around us first, when we choose to extend forgiveness, when we choose to be as intentional as God is about it, people are going to think we're nuts. And they're going to go, why would you do that? And that question, why would you ever forgive them, opens up the opportunity for a witness to be able to say, why did God forgive me? I forgave them because I know God has forgiven me. Doesn't mean that what they did was okay. It doesn't mean I'm cool with it. But you know what it does mean? It means I'm trying my best to be like Jesus. And I think he did it perfect. So I just want to be more like him. Opens up a cool opportunity. Can strengthen the witness you have and the calling you have to make disciples. Question is, will we choose it? And I can't choose for you. And I don't always do it right. But I'm telling you right now, I'm sure going to try. And I hope you will too. Because by offering forgiveness, you're offering people an opportunity to experience what it's like to walk with Jesus. Listen, thanks for tuning in this morning to Bible Study Live. I appreciate you. Every Monday through Friday, somewhere between 7:30 and 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, I do this. So join me again tomorrow. We'll dig into some more fun stuff. Listen, no matter where you're at in your walk with God, you're just one moment away from taking another step closer to Jesus.